1932. It was the time when you could buy a Chevrolet Roadster for only $445, or 8 pounds of steak for $1.60. Franklin D. Roosevelt was campaigning against Herbert Hoover for presidential office. Ford had just unveiled its new V8 cylinder engine. The Lindbergh baby was kidnapped, and the Great Depression was gathering strength. In Alabama, the infamous trials of the Scottsboro Boys were going on. And in the middle of all of this, a great tragedy took place, one that passed unnoticed by the majority of our nation. The date, March 21st, 1932.
This is my oldest brother. His name was Jackson B. He was blown away in a tornado, 1932.
We had quite a few people killed in it, but it come just on this angle, and it just tore corns off. This area here they call corns, and it just literally tore it up. It was unreal. It was nothing to see a sage straw go through a tube before. Oh, I was scared to death.
We didn't have warning systems back in those days, so you didn't know if it was a thunderstorm or what it was. But it took the whole house off of them and left most of the people still in bed, except one half brother and my oldest brother. JB blew him up in the fork of a tree, and a 2x4 cut his leg off. So before they found him, he'd already bled to death.
J.B. would never make it back home alive, but his half-brother Ira Tate would eventually make it back to the family homestead. Bruised and wounded, he would narrowly miss falling down a submerged well just within sight of home, or the place where home used to be.
My sister, half-sister, was up covering up all the other people that were still in bed with quilts because all the debris was flying around, so they wouldn't get injured. And she had pit marks all in her head from, getting hit.
I remember my dad talking about it. Talking about Aunt Annie Mae disappeared. And of course they're out looking everywhere for people. Well, they found Aunt Annie Mae asleep with 2 little kids under a mattress out in the field. She had been thrown and tossed, but she hung on to them 2 little kids. And somebody was calling her, so she had just happened to hear them and woke up totally exhausted, I guess.
But no one else actually got really injured from it.
The tornado that killed J.B. was actually part of a massive tornado outbreak that swept across Alabama and into neighboring states. It hit in 3 separate waves and lasted throughout the day. In Alabama alone, 332 people were killed.
It was like temperatures in the 60s, dew point like 62. There was a strong south wind. It was very cloudy, and it rained a little bit that morning. When I look at it, it doesn't look that impressive to me. But it really turned out to be an incredible event. 10 of those 14 tornadoes in Alabama that day were rated EF3 or higher. They had 0 warning. It wasn't television. Radio stations had no way of knowing. It literally, came down to calling to communities ahead. And a lot of times you couldn't do that because the phone lines would be down.
Scared my mom so bad. Years after that, if we lived someplace and didn't have a storm cellar, we had to dig one. And if it thundered, we were in that storm cellar. So it was a frightening ordeal for them.
This event right here, you would think would have spurred some people to have, worked a little harder to forecast tornadoes, but no. It's really a very forgotten event. When you look at it nationally, it's not an event that's talked about. I think one thing that's really interesting as I started looking at these tornadoes was that it not only was a stormy time in the weather, but it was a hugely stormy time in our country because of the Depression and what was going on in Europe. Because Hitler was beginning to come to power in Germany, and there were a lot of problems around the world. And I think those things are fascinating.